We cannot let her incompetence tarnish this legacy any longer. Let's be honest, her IQ is closer to the help than to an heiress. She is a genetic disappointment. And today, we are finally scrubbing the stain clean. My father's voice boomed across the vineyard, every word a calculated strike. He raised his champagne glass and pointed directly at me. Standing in the back in a server's uniform, 200 guests turned to stare. My mother sipped her wine, unbothered. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just checked my watch. 2:01. Perfect. He thought he was ending my future. He didn't realize he had just triggered the trap I'd spent 5 years building. Before I tell you what happened next and how I legally evicted my own parents from their $15 million mansion in under 10 minutes, drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated by your own family? I want to read your stories. I slipped through the service doors into the commercial kitchen, the heavy stainless steel shutting out the sound of my father's laughter and the applause of 200 guests. It was quiet here. Cold. The kind of sterile silence where you can finally hear yourself think. I set the tray of dirty champagne flutes on the counter and looked at the manila envelope Mr. Thorne had pressed into my hand. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady. That's what 5 years of holding your breath does to you. It teaches you stillness. My name is Kara. I am 27 years old, and for the last half-decade, my official job title within the family empire was unpaid family intern. That was my father's idea of a joke. While my sister Victoria received a $500,000 annual allowance to network in Paris and Milan, I was given a room in the servants' quarters and a $0 salary. My father called it building character. He said that because I was slow, his favorite word for me, I needed to learn the value of hard work from the bottom up. So I worked. I managed the estate's logistics. I balanced the books for the commercial wing, and I drafted the architectural plans for the new tasting room that Victoria was currently taking credit for outside. But the cruelty wasn't the lack of money. It was the paperwork. Every Friday at 5 in the afternoon, my father would call me into his study. He would slide a timesheet across his mahogany desk. Sign it, he would say, swirling his scotch. Document your hours. We need a record of how long it takes you to do simple tasks. It's for your own development. I signed them. Every single week, 80 hours, 90 hours. I logged every minute. I scrubbed floors, balanced spreadsheets, and designed buildings. While he stood there mocking my handwriting, telling me I was lucky he let me live under his roof. You might be asking, why? Why did I stay? Why did I sign papers that were designed to humiliate me? There is a trap that happens when you are raised by people who view kindness as a weakness and cruelty as love. It's called the trap of normalized cruelty. When you grow up in a cage, you don't dream of the jungle. You just dream of a slightly bigger cage. They had spent 27 years convincing me that I was broken, that I was a liability, and that their exploitation was actually charity. I believed that if I just worked harder, if I just proved I was useful, eventually they would see me. I thought I was earning my place in the family. I looked down at the document Mr. Thorne had given me. It wasn't a will. It was a copy of the company's operating agreement, dated 10 years ago, signed by my grandmother Beatrice. My eyes scanned the pages until they landed on a specific clause highlighted in yellow. I froze. The air in the kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, opening the digital archive where I had secretly scanned every single one of those timesheets for 5 years. Not because I thought they were valuable, but because I am neurotic about record-keeping. My father thought he was documenting my incompetence. He thought he was building a case to prove I was slow, stupid, and worthless. He thought he was shaming me. I traced the signature on the screen, his signature, verifying my thousands of hours of unpaid labor. He wasn't documenting my shame. He was documenting his debt. And looking at the clause in my grandmother's agreement, I realized with a jolt of adrenaline that he had just signed away his kingdom, one Friday afternoon at a time. I put the phone away. I picked up the tray again. I wasn't the maid anymore. I was the bill collector. And it was time to go collect. I walked out of the kitchen and straight toward the main stage. The band was playing some generic jazz cover, the kind of music designed to make rich people feel comfortable while they ignored the help. I spotted the main power console behind a trellis of white roses. I didn't hesitate. I reached down and yanked the master cord. The music died with a groan. The microphones cut out. 200 conversations stuttered to a halt. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, thick with confusion and the sudden, sharp realization that something was wrong. My father, Gregory, froze mid-laugh. He looked around, his smile faltering, until his eyes landed on me standing by the power outlet. The veins in his neck bulged. He stormed off the stage, marching toward me with the kind of heavy, aggressive strides he usually reserved for firing executives. Victoria trailed behind him, her face twisted in a sneer. What do you think you're doing? Gregory hissed, grabbing my arm hard enough to bruise. Turn the power back on. Now. I can't, I said calmly. The party is over. Victoria laughed, a high, brittle sound. Oh my God. Look at her. She's actually trying to ruin my moment. Are you that jealous, Kara? Just because Dad finally admitted you're a waste of space doesn't mean you get to throw a tantrum. This isn't a tantrum, I said. This is an eviction. Ignore her, Gregory announced to the nearby guests, his voice pitching up into that fake, jovial tone he used for damage control. My daughter is having one of her episodes. Please, everyone, grab another drink. We'll handle this. He leaned in close to my ear, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and rot. You want to play games? Fine. Let's play. I wasn't going to tell you until Monday. But since you're acting like a lunatic, you should know. We've already signed the papers. What papers? Conservatorship, he whispered, the words sliding out like a knife. We're sending you to the Whispering Pines facility next week. Long-term care. Clearly, you're mentally unstable. You can't be trusted to live on your own, and you certainly can't be trusted around normal people. My blood ran cold. Whispering Pines wasn't a care facility. It was a warehouse for the inconvenient relatives of the wealthy. They weren't just kicking me out. They were planning to lock me away, to silence me, to erase me completely so they wouldn't have to look at their failure anymore. You're going to institutionalize me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It's for your own good, my mother added, appearing at his elbow, adjusting her diamond bracelet as if we were discussing dinner plans. You're obviously unwell, Kara. Look at you, creating a scene. Only a sick person would do this to her own sister. That was the moment the last thread snapped. The final, microscopic fiber of loyalty I held for these people disintegrated. They weren't my family. They were predators. And you don't negotiate with predators. You put them down. You're right, I said, pulling my arm free from his grip. I am making a scene. But you haven't seen anything yet. I turned and walked toward the stage. The microphone was dead, but my voice had never been stronger. I stepped onto the stage and plugged the master power cord back in. A sharp screech of feedback tore through the air, causing 200 guests to cover their ears. It was an ugly sound, violent and raw, but it got the job done. The murmurs stopped. The laughter died. I tapped the microphone twice. Thump, thump. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice echoing across the vineyard with a clarity that made my mother flinch. I need your attention. This event is officially over. Gregory froze at the bottom of the stage stairs, his face a mask of purple rage. Cut the mic, he screamed at the sound technician, who was frantically looking between us, unsure who signed his paycheck anymore. Don't listen to her. She's having a breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown, I said, looking out at the sea of designer suits and silk dresses. I'm conducting a business transaction. And right now, you are all trespassing. Get off that stage, Victoria shrieked, hiking up her couture gown to rush the stairs. You're ruining everything. I didn't move. I simply opened the folder Mr. Thorne had given me and held up the blue-bordered document for the front row to see. For 27 years, my father has told you that the Highland estate is his legacy. He lied. 10 years ago, my grandmother Beatrice split this property into 2 distinct legal parcels. The residential wing, where my parents sleep, and the commercial wing, the vineyards, the tasting room, and this specific event lawn where you are currently standing. I looked down at Gregory. He had stopped moving. The color was draining from his face as the realization hit him like a freight train. He knew about the split. He just never thought I would see the deed. According to this operating agreement, I continued, my voice cold and flat, ownership of the commercial wing transfers automatically to the majority shareholder of the family trust. And thanks to the unpaid labor documents my father just spent 5 years verifying with his own signature, that majority shareholder is me. A gasp rippled through the crowd. I saw the investors in the front row whispering, pulling out their phones. They understood hostile takeovers. They understood leverage. As the sole owner of this venue, I announced, I am hereby revoking the permit for this event due to severe liability concerns regarding the current management's competency. You have 10 minutes to vacate the premises before I authorize the removal of all unauthorized personnel. You can't do this, Gregory roared, lunging for the stairs. This is my house. Security. Get her down. Security, I repeated into the mic. Please remove the trespassers. He turned, expecting the estate's usual elderly gate guards. Instead, 5 men in tactical black uniforms stepped out from the shadows of the trellis. I hadn't hired them from the local firm. Mr. Thorne had brought them in from a private protection agency in San Francisco. They moved with the silent, heavy precision of a thunderstorm. 2 of them stepped in front of the stage, blocking Victoria and my mother. The other three formed a wall between Gregory and the guests. 10 minutes, I said, checking my watch again. I suggest you take your gift bags. It's a long walk to the main road. For a moment, nobody moved. It was a standoff between the old king and the new reality. Then, the first guest, a rival winemaker who had hated my father for years, set down his glass and started walking toward the exit. That broke the spell. The herd turned. The party disintegrated into a chaotic stream of valets and confusion. I stood on the stage, watching my family's perfect image crumble in real time. I felt tall. I felt terrifying. But Gregory wasn't done. He stared up at me, his eyes narrowing into slits of pure malice. He reached into his jacket pocket. Not for a weapon, but for his phone. He didn't look defeated. He looked like a man who was about to flip the board because he was losing the game. He typed a single text message and smiled. It was the smile of a predator who knows something the prey doesn't. The sound of sirens cut through the valley air like a scream. It started faint, a distant wail rising over the murmur of the departing guests. But within seconds, it was deafening. Blue and red lights flashed against the white trellis, painting the vineyard in violent, strobing colors. The remaining guests froze. Security guards looked toward the driveway. Even Victoria stopped her shrieking. I looked at Gregory. He wasn't looking at the approaching police cars. He was looking at me, checking his watch with the calm satisfaction of a man who had just timed a demolition perfectly. "You didn't think I'd let you walk away with my property, did you?" he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. 3 squad cars screeched to a halt at the edge of the lawn. Doors flew open. Uniformed officers spilled out, their hands resting near their holsters, moving with the aggressive urgency of a high-stakes raid. I expected them to head toward Gregory. I expected Mr. Thorne to step forward and explain the trespassing. I expected logic. Instead, the lead officer pointed straight at me. "Kara!" he shouted, bypassing my father entirely. "Step away from the podium and keep your hands where we can see them." My stomach dropped. "What? I'm the owner. I just... Step down. Now." I walked down the stairs, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. 2 officers grabbed my arms before my feet even touched the grass. They spun me around, forcing my chest against the side of the stage. "You are under arrest for grand theft and corporate espionage," the officer recited, the metal of the handcuffs clicking tight against my wrists. "We have a sworn statement regarding the theft of $50,000 in vintage wine reserves and the theft of proprietary trade secrets." Theft. The word rang in my ears. Absurd and terrifying. I looked up and saw my mother standing by the trellis, clutching her pearls, playing the role of the devastated victim to perfection. Victoria was recording everything on her phone, a smirk playing on her lips. And Gregory was walking toward the police, shaking his head with a performance of heavy, paternal sorrow. "I'm so sorry, officers," he said, loud enough for the lingering crowd to hear. "We tried to handle this internally. We didn't want to involve the authorities. But when she became violent, when we realized how much she had taken..." "You filed the report this morning," I realized, staring at him. He stepped into my personal space, close enough that the officers thought he was saying a tearful goodbye. He leaned down, his eyes devoid of anything human. "Of course I did," he whispered. "Did you really think I'd leave my legacy unprotected against a jealous, incompetent little girl? I knew you were planning something. I knew you'd try to use your little access codes to hurt us." He patted my shoulder, for the benefit of the audience. "You're going to jail, Kara," Gregory sneered. "You'll drown in legal fees while I take back everything you thought you earned." He smiled like a wolf baring its teeth. For a moment, I believed him. 5 years of unpaid labor, 80-hour weeks, trying to prove I was worthy only to be framed by the man I built the company for. The officers closed in. The guests whispered, and I felt myself disappearing. Then a voice cut through everything. "Officer, remove those cuffs. Now." Mr. Thorne stepped forward, a document raised like a sword. "You're arresting the majority owner of this estate for stealing her own property," he said. "Do that, and the lawsuit will be legendary." The officer froze. He filed the complaint. "He's the owner." "No," Thorne replied calmly. "He's a 14% investor with zero authority." Thorne slapped the operating agreement onto the hood. Section 4. Sweat equity. 40 hours a week for 36 months converts unpaid labor into preferred stock at double valuation. Gregory's face drained. Thorne opened a box filled with timesheets all signed by Gregory, documenting every hour I worked. "Calculated against valuation," Thorne said. "Miss Highland holds 60% ownership." The officer looked at the papers, then at me. "She owns the wine?" "She owns everything," Thorne said, "including the ground you're standing on." The cuffs came off. My father shrank before my eyes, money gone, power evaporated. He wasn't a king anymore, just a small, frightened man. The officer asked, "Do you want to press charges?" I looked at Gregory. Broken. Silent. "No. Just get them off my property." Security escorted my father, mother, and sister to the gate. Their protests died in the vineyard silence as they drove away. That night, under the moonlight, Thorne raised a glass to the new landlord. 6 months later, Highland Estate is gone. It is now Beatrice and Cara Vineyards. The mansion is a writer's retreat. My old room is a scholarship office. We fund students. Nobody believed in people like me. Gregory and my mother live quietly in Arizona. I send them small checks, minimum wage, formatted like pay stubs. Victoria works in a law firm. She asked for a loan. I sent her a harvesting job application instead. In my new office hangs one framed item. A timesheet from my 25th birthday, 82 hours, signed by Gregory. A reminder. Power isn't inherited. It's earned. Boundaries are doors. And sometimes the scapegoat becomes the owner. If you've ever quietly built something while everyone doubted you, tell me what it is. I'm listening.